a $400,000 condo in BGC. Put her name on everything. She told me it was our dream, our future, but the keys never came to me. When I asked to move in, she said I wasn't welcome anymore. I gave her everything. She took it all. I was sitting in that cafe in Makati, third day in Manila, sweating through my shirt even though the air conditioning was on full blast. The noise outside was overwhelming. Jeepneys honking, vendors shouting, music blaring from somewhere I couldn't see. I'd sold my house in Tampa 3 months after burying my wife. 42 years of marriage, gone in a hospital room that smelled like bleach and regret. My kids called once after the funeral, then nothing. I thought maybe starting over somewhere new would help, somewhere warm, somewhere I didn't have to see her face in every corner of every room. I ordered another coffee I didn't want and stared at my phone, wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. That's when she walked in. She wore a white blouse and dark slacks, professional but not stiff. And she had this presence about her, confident, like she belonged everywhere she went. She ordered something in Tagalog, laughed with the barista, then turned and caught me staring. I looked away fast, embarrassed, but she smiled and walked over. "You look lost," she said. Her English was perfect, almost no accent. "Is it that obvious?" I said, trying to laugh it off. She sat down across from me without asking. Normally that would bother me, but I was so lonely I didn't care. "Let me guess," she said, leaning forward slightly. "You just moved here. You're staying in a hotel or some overpriced Airbnb in Makati. You've been to the mall 3 times because you don't know where else to go, and you're wondering if you made a terrible mistake." I stared at her. "How did you—" "I work with expats," she said. "I'm in real estate. I see this look all the time. You're not lost. You just haven't found your place here yet." Something about the way she said it made me feel seen, really seen, for the first time in years. "I'm Tessalyn," she said, extending her hand. "Keith," I said, shaking. Her grip was firm. She asked me where I was from, what brought me here, if I was retired. I told her about Florida, about the insurance business, about losing my wife. I didn't mean to say that last part, but it just came out. She didn't look away or change the subject like most people do. She just nodded. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "That's a heavy thing to carry." We talked for 2 hours. She told me about Manila, about the neighborhoods, about the bureaucracy foreigners face when trying to set up a life here. She didn't try to sell me anything. She just listened. When I finally looked at my watch, the sun was setting. "I should let you go," I said. "You probably have other things to do." "I'm free," she said. "And honestly, I like talking to you. You're not like the other expats I meet. You're not here to party or chase girls. You're here to heal." I felt something shift in my chest. She got it. She understood. "Can I take you to dinner?" she asked. "My treat. I know a place you'll love." I hesitated for maybe half a second. Then I said yes. We went to a quiet restaurant overlooking the bay. The food was incredible. The conversation was better. She asked about my kids, my life back home, what I missed. I asked about her work, her life in Manila. She was careful, measured, but warm. By the end of the night, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. When she dropped me off at my hotel, she squeezed my hand. "You're going to be okay here, Keith," she said. I can tell. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. And that was my first mistake. Over the next 3 weeks, Tessalyn became my guide to everything. She took me to places I never would have found on my own. Little restaurants in Quezon City where the locals ate, markets in Manila, quiet parks where old men played chess under the trees. She never rushed me, never made me feel like a burden. We'd meet 2, sometimes 3 times a week. She'd help me with my visa paperwork, explain the banking system, translate when I got confused. I started looking forward to seeing her. Started checking my phone to see if she'd texted. One night, we went to a restaurant on the water. The sun was setting, turning the sky orange and pink. We We'd been talking about nothing important, just easy conversation, when she got quiet. "Can I tell you something?" she said. "Of course." She looked down at her hands. "I don't usually get this personal with clients, but you're not really a client anymore. You're a friend." I felt my chest tighten. "I feel the same way." She smiled, but it was sad. "I'm a single mother, Keith. My son is 14. His father left when he was 2. Just walked out one day and never came back. I've been doing this alone ever since." "I'm sorry," I said. "That must be incredibly hard." "It is," she said. "People here judge you for that, being a single mother. They think you did something wrong, that you're broken. But I work hard. I take care of my son. I don't ask anyone for help." There was something in her voice that broke me, pride mixed with pain. "You're doing an amazing job," I said. "Your son is lucky to have you." She looked up at me, and her eyes were wet. "Thank you. That means more than you know." The waiter came by, and we ordered more drinks. The conversation shifted, but something had changed between us. She'd let me in, trusted me. Later, as we were leaving, she mentioned her son's school fees were coming up. She didn't ask for anything, just mentioned it, offhand, like it was a fact of life. "How much are they?" I asked. "Keith, no," she said quickly. It wasn't how much. She hesitated. 20,000 pesos. It's not your responsibility. I did the math in my head. That was less than $400. Nothing to me. Everything to her. "Let me help." I said. "Please. You've done so much for me these past few weeks. Let me do this." She shook her head. I could see she was struggling. "I don't want you to think I'm using you." "I don't think that," I said. And I meant it. She finally nodded, tears spilling over. "Thank you," she whispered. That night, lying in bed, I thought about my wife. She would have liked Tessalyn. Would have told me it was good to help someone.
काउंटर
I
पे
fell
हैं
asleep
तो
feeling
काउंटर से
lighter
फिर
than
पीछे
before.
निकल जाएं क्योंकि मैं अभी बाहर हूँ।
I thought I was being
तो
generous.
मैं साइड पे
I
लग
thought
के
I
ना
was
फिर मैं
building something
मोबाइल से
new.
ही सिस्टम को एक्सेस
I
करके
didn't
बनाऊंगा
realize I
तो
was
वो
already
10-15
being
मिनट इजीली
played.
लगेंगे इस चीज़ में।
3 weeks
तो आप
later,
पीछे चले जाएं
Tessalyn
उनको कि हम
called me
टिकट
while
इशू
I was
करवा के ला
having
रहे हैं।
breakfast. "Keith, are you free today?" she
हाँ
asked.
मैं कर देता हूँ, मुझे
Her voice
पासपोर्ट
had
भेज
that
दें और
excitement
एक बार
touch.
डेट भी दोबारा लिखे भेज
"I
दीजिए।
have something I
ओके
want to show you." "Sure," I said. "What is it?" "It's a surprise. Can you meet me in Bonifacio Global City in an hour?" I'd heard of BGC, the expat area, modern high-rises, clean streets, Western restaurants. I'd driven through it once, but never stopped. When I met her outside a gleaming tower, she was practically glowing. "Come on," she said, grabbing my hand. She led me inside, past a security guard who nodded at her, into a pristine lobby with marble floors and a fountain. We took the elevator to the 15th floor. She pulled out a key card and opened a door. The condo was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, an open kitchen with granite counters, 2 bedrooms, a balcony. "What do you think?" she asked, watching my face. "It's beautiful," I said. "But why are we here?" She walked to the window and looked out. "This is where you could build a real life, Keith. Not some cramped hotel room, not a temporary rental, a real home." I looked
सिस्टम
around,
एक्सेस कर रहा
my
मतलब
heart
पासपोर्ट
pounding.
भेजा है 15 जनवरी तो
"Tessalyn,
ना 15
this
जनवरी
has to
को
cost
बोल तो और दी टिकट
$400,000.
बना के इशू करवा दे वाइट में।
I know it's a lot, but property
और
values
काउंटर पे
here
रुका
are
हुआ है ना।
exploding.
और ये
In 5 years,
सस्ती
this could be worth 600,000,
वो कह रहे टिकट इशू
maybe more.
काउंटर्स देने हो
I felt
उन्होंने वो
dizzy.
कह रहे कि टिकट वापसी
That
देना
was more
कंफर्म
than
ले गया।
half of what I'd made from selling my house in Florida.
आओ
I
मलेशिया
can't afford this, I said. She turned to face me.
ਉਹ ਹਲੇ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਪਾਸ ਤੇ ਸੀ ਹੁਣ ਵਾਪਸ ਆਏ हैं विजिट
but
वीज़ा
I've
ਤੇ
been
ਹੁਣ ਜਾ ਕੇ
thinking,
ਉੱਥੋਂ ਮਲੇਸ਼ੀਆ
as
से
a
जाके चेंज
foreigner,
होएगा वीज़ा।
you can't own property here outright. You need a Filipino co-owner, someone you trust, someone who would never take advantage of you. The room suddenly felt smaller. "What are you saying?" "Put it in my name," she said. "Legally. But we draw up an agreement that protects your investment. You wire the money, we buy the property together, and when you're ready, we can transfer partial ownership or rent it out or whatever you want. But this way, you're protected. And you have a real home. I should have said no right there. Should have walked out, but I didn't. Because she wasn't just selling me real estate. She was selling me a future where I wasn't alone. Tessalyn, that's a huge amount of trust, I said. She walked over and took my hands. I know. And I wouldn't ask if I didn't care about you. Keith, you're not just a client to me. You're not just a friend. You've become important to me. And I want to build something real with you. Not just this condo. A life. My throat felt tight. Are you saying? I'm saying I want to try. She said softly, if you do. I looked into her eyes and I saw everything I wanted. Safety, connection, a second chance. I would never take advantage of you, she said. I swear to you, this is our home. Not mine, ours. I believed her. God help me. I believed every word. 2 weeks later, I wired $400,000 into the account she'd set up. We signed papers at a law office in Makati. She kissed me on the cheek when we left. This is our home now, she whispered. I felt like the luckiest man alive. I had no idea I'd just signed away everything. The first month after we bought the condo, everything felt perfect. Tessalyn and I spent hours at furniture stores picking out pieces together. She'd ask my opinion on everything. Couch colors, kitchen appliances, curtains. What do you think about this one? She'd say, holding up fabric samples. I like it, I'd say. But you're the one with the eye for design. It's for both of us, she'd insist. Your opinion matters. We'd have coffee on the construction site sometimes, watching workers install the floors. She'd rest her head on my shoulder and talk about our future, about how peaceful life would be once we moved in, how we'd host dinners for other expats, how her son could have his own room when he visited. It all felt so real, but then things started to shift. Small things at first. She'd cancel plans last minute. Something came up with the contractor, she'd say. Or, my son isn't feeling well. I need to stay home. When I'd suggest visiting the condo together, she'd say, not yet. It's not ready. I want it to be perfect when you see it. I tried to be understanding. She was juggling a lot. But then I noticed her phone. It was always buzzing, always lighting up with messages she'd quickly dismiss. One afternoon, we were having lunch when a call came through. The name on the screen said Rico. She looked at it, then silenced it. Who's Rico? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. A contractor, she said, not looking up. He's persistent. Does he call you a lot? She finally met my eyes. Keith, he's working on our place. Yes, he calls. That's his job. Right, I said. Of course. But something felt off. I couldn't name it, but it was there. A distance that hadn't been before. When construction finished, I was excited. Finally, we could move in, start our life. I called her that morning. The place is done, right? I said. We can move in this weekend? There was a pause. Let's take it slow, she said. What do you mean? I mean, there's still some finishing touches. Furniture deliveries, paperwork with the building management. Give me a few more weeks. Weeks? I said, trying not to sound frustrated. Tessalyn, it's been 3 months since we signed. I know, she said. Her voice had an edge now, but I want it to be perfect. Trust me. I wanted to. I really did. But that night, I drove to BGC on my own. I parked across from the building and looked up at the 15th floor. The lights were on. I could see movement inside. My chest tightened. I pulled out my phone and texted her. Are you at the condo? 20 minutes passed. No response. An hour. Nothing. I sat there until midnight, watching those lights, wondering who was inside. The next day she called. Sorry I didn't respond last night, she said. I fell asleep early. Why were you asking? No reason, I said. Just curious. But I wasn't curious anymore. I was afraid. Because deep down, I knew something was wrong. I just wasn't ready to admit it yet. 2 months later, the condo was supposedly ready. Completely finished. Tessalyn sent me photos. New furniture. Artwork on the walls. Everything looked perfect. Can I come see it? I asked. Soon, she said. I'm still organizing a few things. Tessalyn, I helped pay for this, I said, my patience finally cracking. I should be able to see it. You will, she said. I promise. Just a few more days. But days turned into another week. I tried to stay calm, but the doubt was eating at me. One afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to BGC, walked into the building, and told the security guard I was there to see Unit 1507. Name? He asked. Keith Morgan. He checked his computer, then shook his head. Sorry, sir. You're not on the access list. My stomach dropped. There must be a mistake. I own that unit. The registered owner is Tessalyn Santos, he said. Only she can approve visitors. I felt the room tilt. Can you call her? He did. She didn't answer. I stood there for 20 minutes, calling her over and over, until finally she picked up. Keith, what's wrong? I'm downstairs, I said. At our building. They won't let me up. Silence. Then, you went there without telling me? Telling you? I said, my voice rising. Why do I need permission to see my own property? It's not about permission, she said. It's about respect. You can't just show up. Tessalyn, I paid for this place. $400,000. I know what you paid, she said coldly. And I've been working nonstop to make it perfect for us, but you don't trust me. That's what this is really about. That's not, I'll add you to the visitor list, she said, but I need time to prepare the place. Give me 3 days. She hung up. I stood there, phone in my hand, security guard looking at me with pity. 3 days later, she finally let me come up. She met me at the door, arms crossed. Come in, she said. The place was immaculate, furniture perfectly arranged, fresh flowers on the table. It looked like something out of a magazine. It's beautiful, I said. Thank you, she said. Her voice was flat. We stood there in awkward silence. I looked around trying to find something to say. So when can I move in? I asked. She turned away. Let's talk about that later. Later? I said. Tessalyn, we've been talking about this for months. Keith, I need space, she said suddenly. This has been overwhelming. The construction, the pressure. I need time to breathe. Space? I repeated. From what? From this? She said, gesturing between us. From you assuming we're moving in together, like we're married. We're not. The words hit me like a punch. I thought, I know what you thought, she said. But I never promised you that. I never said we'd live together. You said this was our home. And it is, she said. But that doesn't mean we have to occupy it at the same time. I stared at her. The woman I'd trusted. The woman I'd given everything to. She looked like a stranger. Can I at least see the paperwork? I asked quietly. The deed. The ownership documents. The agreement we talked about. Her face hardened. Why? Because I want to make sure everything's in order. You don't trust me, she said. That's what this is. After everything I've done, you still don't trust me. Tessalyn, please. Get out, she said. I'm sorry? Get out of my condo, she said. Now, I felt my legs go weak. Your condo? Yes, she said. Mine. Legally. On paper. In every way that matters. Now leave. I walked to the elevator in a daze. The door closed. And I realized I'd just been locked out of the home I'd paid for. I spent 3 days in my hotel room, barely eating, not sleeping. I kept replaying her words. My condo, get out. I'd call her, and she wouldn't answer. I'd text, and she'd leave me on red. On the 4th day, I finally admitted to myself what I'd been avoiding. I needed a lawyer. I found one through a Google search. An older Filipino man named Adi Rodriguez, who specialized in foreign property disputes. His office was small, tucked above a pharmacy in Makati. I brought every document I had: bank transfers, receipts, emails, the supposed agreement Tessalyn had promised we'd sign. He spent an hour going through everything, his face getting more serious with each page. Finally, he looked up at me. "Mr. Keith," he said slowly, "I need to be very direct with you. Do you understand?" "Yes," I said. My mouth was dry. "You don't own this property," he said. "Not legally, not even partially. You're not listed anywhere, not as a co-investor, not as a beneficiary, nothing." The room started spinning. "But I paid for it. I have the wire transfers right there. I see them," he said. "But the property title is solely in Tessalyn Santos's name. In the eyes of Philippine law, you made a gift, or a loan, but you have no ownership stake." She said we'd protect it with an agreement, I said. My voice sounded hollow. "Did you sign this agreement?" She said we'd do it after the purchase. He shook his head. "Then it doesn't exist. And even if you had signed something, without your name on the title deed, it would be nearly impossible to enforce." I couldn't breathe. $400,000. Gone. "What can I do?" I asked. He sighed. "You can file a civil case, attempt to prove fraud or unjust enrichment. But Mr. Keith, cases like this take years, and the burden of proof is on you. You'd need to demonstrate that she explicitly deceived you, that there was a clear agreement she violated." "There was," I said desperately. "She told me what she told you verbally won't hold up in court," he said gently. "Not without evidence, recordings, written agreements, witnesses." I put my head in my hands. "So I have nothing." "I'm afraid so," he said. "I'm very sorry." I left his office and drove straight to Tessalyn's apartment. I'd only been there once, months ago. I pounded on the door until she opened it. "What do you want?" she said. She didn't look surprised. "Just annoyed." "I want the truth," I said. "The real truth." She crossed her arms. "Fine. Come in." I followed her inside. Her son was at school. We were alone. "I saw a lawyer," I said. "He told me I don't own anything, that it's all in your name." "That's correct," she said calmly. "You lied to me," I said. My voice was shaking. "You said we'd protect my investment. You said it was our home." "Keith, I never forced you to do anything," she said. "You chose to help me. You chose to wire that money. Because you told me, I told you that foreigners can't own property alone," she said. "Which is true. I told you we'd work something out." "Which we did." "You got to be part of something, to feel useful, to feel loved. Isn't that what you wanted?" I stared at her. "Did you ever care about me? At all?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I cared about you, in my way. But Keith, I have a son to raise. I have a future to build. You're a 68-year-old widower with money you don't know what to do with. I gave you purpose. I gave you companionship. That's not nothing. You used me," I said. "I provided a service," she said coldly. "You paid for it. That's how the world works." "Did you ever love me?" I asked. The question hung in the air. She looked me right in the eyes. "No," she said. "I never did." Something inside me shattered. "You're a monster," I whispered. "I'm a survivor," she said, "and you were a fool. Now get out. I have work to do." I walked out of her apartment and down to the street. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't unlock my car. I sat on the curb and cried for the first time since my wife's funeral. I'd given her everything, and she'd given me nothing but lies. The next morning, I went back to Eti Rodriguez. "I want to fight this," I said. "I don't care how long it takes." He leaned back in his chair. "Mr. Keith, I need you to understand something. Fighting this will cost you more money. Legal fees, court costs, years of your life. And at the end of it, you'll almost certainly lose." "Why?" "Because Philippine law protects property owners," She owns the title. The burden is on you to prove she defrauded you. And from what you've told me, she was very careful. She never put anything in writing, never made explicit promises you can document. She's done this before. Those words hit me like a truck. She's done this before? He nodded. I've seen cases like yours. Expats fall in love. They want to help. They wire money. Then they wake up and realize they own nothing. How many? I asked. More than I can count, he said sadly. I sat there, the weight of it crushing me. I wasn't special. I wasn't even unique. I was just another lonely old man who got played. So what do? I asked. You let it go, he said. You accept the loss, and you move on with your life. Because if you fight this, it will consume you. You'll spend the next 5 years angry and broke. Or you can take what's left of your money, your dignity, and start over. It's not fair, but it's reality. I thought about my wife, about what she would say. She'd tell me to walk away, to not let this woman steal any more of my life than she already had. Okay, I said quietly. Okay. He looked surprised. You're sure? No, I said, but it's the right choice. I paid his fee and left. That evening, I drove to BGC one last time. I parked across from the building and looked up at the 15th floor. The lights were on. Music was playing. Laughter drifted down. She was probably hosting friends, celebrating, living in the home I'd built for her. I sat there for an hour, just looking. Then I whispered, I really believed you, and I drove away. I didn't go back. I didn't text her. I didn't call. I just let it go, because holding on would have killed me, and she'd already taken enough. 6 months later, I'm sitting in a cafe in Makati. Not the same one where I met Tessalyn. I can't go back there, but a smaller place, quieter. I've been thinking a lot about my late wife lately, about what she would have said if I'd told her what I was planning. She would have seen through Tessalyn in a heartbeat, would have grabbed my arm and said, Keith, don't you dare. But she's not here, and I made the choice alone. I think about my kids sometimes. My daughter called last month. First time in over a year. Dad, how's the Philippines? She asked. It's fine, I said. You adjusting, okay? Yeah. You sound different, she said. I'm fine, honey. Just tired. I couldn't tell her. Couldn't admit I'd lost $400,000 to a woman who never loved me. She'd lose what little respect she had left for me. I've been going to a therapist, a British woman who works with expats. She asked me last week, do you hate her? No, I said. I don't hate her. Then what do you feel? I thought about it for a long time. I feel stupid, I said, like I should have known better. Like every red flag was right there, and I ignored them all because I was lonely. You're not stupid, she said. You were grieving, and you wanted to believe you could start over. That's human. It cost me everything, I said. It cost you money, she said. Not everything. You're still here, still breathing, still capable of learning from this. I guess she's right. But some days it doesn't feel that way. Some days I wake up and think about that condo, about the furniture we picked out together, about the way she'd rest her head on my shoulder and talk about our future, about how good it felt to believe someone wanted me. I've started writing letters I'll never send to Tessalyn, to my wife, to myself. Last night I wrote, you didn't steal my money. I gave it to you because I wanted to believe I still mattered to someone, because I was so terrified of dying alone that I ignored every warning sign. You saw that, and you used it. I don't hate you for that. I hate myself for letting it happen. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer with the others. Then I made myself dinner, watched the sunset from my small apartment, went to bed. This is my life now. Smaller, quieter, but mine. I've learned something about second chances. They don't erase the past. They don't fix what's broken. They just give you another day to figure out who you are when everything falls apart. I'm 68 years old. I lost my wife. I lost $400,000. I lost my dignity. But I'm still here. And maybe that's enough. Some days I still drive past the building in BGC. I don't know why. Maybe to remind myself it's real, that it happened, that I'm not crazy. The lights are always on. She's living the life I paid for, and I'm living the life I have left. I order another coffee. The cafe is almost empty. The barista is playing quiet music. Outside, the rain starts to fall. I open my notebook and write one more thing. I gave you everything because I thought love was something you could buy. But love isn't a transaction. And I wasn't buying love. I was buying the feeling of being wanted. And that's the saddest part of all. Not that you lied, but that I needed the lie so badly I convinced myself it was true. I close the notebook, finish my coffee, walk out into the rain. Tomorrow I'll wake up, I'll make breakfast, I'll go for a walk, I'll keep living, because that's what you do when you lose everything. You keep going, not because you're strong, but because stopping means she wins. And I've given her enough. The rain soaks through my shirt. I don't run, I just walk, slow, steady, one step at a time. And for the first time in months, I don't feel ashamed, just awake.